episode of the Goodrum Show with me, Chris Goodrum. Firstly, big thank you to everybody that watched the previous episode of the show, liked, commented, all that kind of thing. Two apologies. Firstly, obviously, for not doing an episode of the show last week, but as a number of you will obviously know, it was the Nottingham Whisky Festival, which I was there, obviously. So big thank you to everybody that came up, tasted the Gauntleys Booner, and said nice things about that and nice things about the show. That was very much appreciated, very cool. And obviously a big thank you to everybody that purchased a bottle of the Gauntleys Booner. Again, really very, very much appreciated. Second apology is I seem to have got another cold. I seem to have just been running into them at the moment. So a little bit croaky, but I don't think it's... certainly not affecting one's ability to taste, so that shouldn't hopefully impair today's episode of the show. And talking of today's episode of the show, obviously we're looking at the latest batch of single cask bottlings from my good friends at James Eadie, and obviously as they kindly continue to send me the samples, I'll carry on reviewing them. And as you know, ordinarily I tend to like to do about half a dozen, but they released 6 single casks, 1 single cask and 6 cask finishes, and so ordinarily I'd just drop one out, but I thought, nah, let's do them all, you know. So this might be a slightly elongated episode of the show, but coming back with a bit of a bang. So not going to say too much more. I'll try and keep this within the confines of about half an hour. So let's just take a look at today's lineup. Okay, so firstly we're going to kick off with the one and only single cask bottling. So this is a single cask of Linkwood. It's 12 years old, from a recharred hoggy, number 310617, distilled in September of 2010, and bottled this year at 57.3. First of the cask finishes, as you well know, I've done a number of episodes on James Eadie. You know that they love to sort of do their cask finish stuff. In actual fact, I think I'm almost bookending the year. I think I did an episode in January on their releases, so almost kind of bookending, like I said. Anyway, bottling number 2 is a Teaninich, 12-year-old, so cask number 361936. Initial maturation in ex-American oak, and then followed by 17 months finishing in ex-first fill European oak Malaga butts. Distilled in 2011, bottled this year, and bottled at 54.2%. Sorry. Bottling number 3 is a Glen Moray, a 10-year-old Glen Moray. This is cask 361159, initial maturation in American oak, followed by 20 months in refill Oloroso butts. As these are all cask strength, talking of butts, my butt is filled to overflowing. That never gets old, that joke. Yeah, I know, puerile sense of humour. Anyway, so where was I? Yes, 10-year-old Glen Moray, Oloroso finish, distilled June 2012, bottled this year at 57.3%. Well, you look at the bloody colour on that. Yeah, okay, so we can definitely tell without a shadow of a doubt, Oloroso finish, and indeed it is. So this is a 9-year-old Glen Ord, cask 362231, initial maturation American oak, 17 months in first fill European oak butt, distilled in 2013, bottled this year at 57.3%. Looking at that colour, are we going to get a lot of Ord character? We'll see. Next bottling is a 15-year-old Benrinnes, so cask 362134, distilled in 2007, and 17 months finishing in first fill Malmsey Madeira butt, bottled at 51%. Penultimate bottling is a 15-year-old Linkwood. This is cask 358022, 25 months finishing in first fill Bual Madeira, but as probably some of you may or may not know the different levels of Madeira. So Bual tends to be slightly more sweeter than Malmsey, I think, if I've got that the right way round. So interesting. Like I said, 25 months finishing, distilled in July of 2007 and bottled of this year. And finally a bit of peat to finish. Their classic Palo Cortado finish, Kalila. They're bottled and three previous bottlings, I think. So this is Cask 367731, distilled in September of 2011, bottled this year, and it spent 5 months finishing in first fill Palo Cortado butts and bottled at 59.3%. Ooh, mother. Yes, I think I'll be on the floor by the time I get to the end of this tasting, so let's kick off with a bit of Linkwood. Right, okay. So, 15-year-old Linkwood, recharred hoggy, so let's see what the nose gives us. There's a lot of oak. I mean, it starts off with some nice gristy barley, some honey, touch of white fruit, acacia, but that oak really comes in quickly. Really intense, really toasty, really lots and lots of charred oak, quite sweet, quite vanillaed. But on the other hand, there's a little bit of green gauge, green fruit, sort of space ID notes. It's an expressive nose, it has to be said. It is kind of not the oiliest and the heaviest of Linkwoods I've ever come across. Like I said, if you kind of peer beyond the oak, it is in that sort of slightly kind of citric end of the sort of Speyside style. Yeah, that's a balanced nose. That's really nice. So let's see what the palms are. More classically Linkwood on the palate, fuller, oilier, richer. Oak is gripping along with the alcohol, but there's a touch of barley, some sugar-coated barley, light floral notes again, getting that slight acacia. Oak is not too intense. I mean, there is that toastiness there. I think overall that's really nicely balanced. Bit short, the alcohol is indeed masking. So we'll put a little drop of water with it and see what happens now. That's nice. That's really opened it up. Lovely, fragrant, aromatic, barleyed. It's kind of pushed the oak down a little bit. I'm getting unsweetened pineapple. You know, that sort of pollen heavy flower note is quite noticeable as well. That's a lovely, lovely Linkwood, really nice. See what the palate's like now. Absolutely delightful. Sweet, but not too sweet. Silky, barleyed, oak under control. A little bit of bittering on the end, which is I quite enjoy. A little bit of spice. Again, fairly weighty, oily, lovely balance. Really, very, very good cask of Linkwood, I think. So, great one to start with. Right, okay, so moving on to the Teaninich. Let's see what the nose gives us on this end, shall we? A lot of the cask. It's dense, it's grapey, it's honeyed, grapey dried fruit. Not getting any distillery character. I mean, the thing is, Teaninich is not exactly, well, it's at the lighter end of the Spey kind of style, isn't it? It doesn't have a, I mean, I'm probably being slightly disingenuous to Teaninich, but it doesn't have an abundance of character, shall we say, and stick it in a Malaga butt, and really you don't get a lot of distillery character. I mean, it's very, very clean. There's obviously no sulphur whatsoever. There's a sweetness there, which is really quite nice. and it's balanced by a little bit of almost salty green nuts, but it's all cask orientated. All the notes are coming from the Malaga butt, and it is slightly grapey. It's not as grapey as say an Oloroso butt, so it's interesting from that kind of point of view, but from a sort of balance of cask and distillery character, it's kind of obviously more skewed towards the cask. See what Pal's right. Dense, honeyed, grapey, dark honey rather than sort of soft light honey. Nice sort of slightly herbal finish, not too masked, it's a little masking. The alcohol is obviously reasonably noticeable. Again, it's all about the cask. There's no distillery character there whatsoever. I mean, it's interesting tasting the sort of the different style of sherry. I mean, all right, it's not sherry because it's from Malaga, but all right, sort of fortified wine cask, that's probably the best way of saying it. So it's interesting from that kind of point of view, but again, it doesn't quite have the balance that I would be looking for. Still, like I said, very clean, no sulphur, can't sort of knock that whatsoever. Alright, it's a bit of lime coming out now. Maybe I'm getting a little bit of distillery character, a little bit of citrus. It's a little bit homogeneous now. Still, you know, if it's the sort of style of whiskey you like, I certainly don't think you would be disappointed by it. Let's see what Pal's like. Again, it's a little homogeneous, it's slightly waxy, maybe there's a touch of citrus, there's a sort of a little bit of a edge there at the finish. Again, I'm not really getting a great deal of distillery character, very clean, good length, and like I said, if it's a sort of style that you like, and it's intriguing, it has to be said, from a sort of, I suppose, a technical point of view, with regards to the use of a different fortified wine cask that's considerably different to Oloroso. So from that point of view, really interesting, but it just lacked the balance for me. Right, okay, so let's move on to the Glen Moray. So Glen Moray refill Oloroso butt. I mean, okay, let's oh my word, that is a stunning nose. I mean, it defies what I was expecting, and this is why you should never kind of prejudge a whiskey before you taste it. I was thinking Glen Moray, similar to Teaninich, although I would say it's got a little bit more character than Teaninich, but even so, you stick it in sherry and it often gets kind of swamped. But you know what? It seems to have brought out the aromatic character of Glen Moray. White fruit, pear, peach. Oh, it's gorgeously honeyed. I mean, that is so aromatic. There's a note from the refill sherry. It's a subtlety. A little bit of dried fruit. A little bit of coffee, some spice, possibly nutmeg, cinnamon, touch of clove as well. I mean, that is just beautiful. This is how to do sherry finish. It's all about being, you know, adding a little bit of character, not being all about the sherry. Stunningly balanced, just absolutely perfect in my personal opinion. Oh, better taste this now. That's got a lovely progression. It kind of opens up with the gritty Oloroso tannins, more Oloroso dried fruit, raisins, sultanas. Then it moves through the sort of apricot, the Glen Moray white fruit, a little bit of spice, moves back into the the sherry. I get more of the spices, a bit of dark honey, again nutmeg, cinnamon, a little bit of clove oil, tobacco leaf. I mean, that is a stunning whiskey, and it doesn't really need water. I mean, although that is 57.3%, yeah, all right, you get a nip from the alcohol, but it's so well contained. It's not sort of overly masking the finish. And like I said, I mean, that is just absolutely stunning. That is great whiskey, balanced. And yeah, I bang on and on and on about balance, but that just personifies it in my personal opinion. The nose is pretty similar to as it was neat. It hasn't really changed an awful lot. Lovely aromatic Glen Moray character. A little bit more green fruit now possibly, but absolutely gorgeous. Let's see what the pals like now. Again, the palate is very similar. It may be a bit softer, a little bit more emphasis on the Oloroso, a little bittering on the finish, but you still get that lovely Glen Moray character coming through right on the mid palate, and it sticks around. I mean, it's certainly not giving up to the sherry, it has to be said. Absolutely stunning, great whiskey, I think. Right, okay, so let's move on to the rather dark Glen Ord. Let's see what the nose gives us on this. Oloroso, and lots of it. Dark dried fruits, Oloroso dried fruits, treacle, a little bit of potpourri kind of spices. Distillery character, nah, none whatsoever, not a hope in hell. And yeah, alright, it's kind of a textbook sherried whiskey at the end of the day. It's another one of those kind of like, well, I wouldn't know where the hell it came from. You wouldn't know. There's no, it's so diametrically opposed to the Glen Moray, where the Glen Moray was so gorgeously balanced. This is just a sherry monster. Now, I know there are lots of you that like sherry monsters. This is why they're produced. I mean, but, you know, but it's just all Oloroso. It's all sherry. It's so heavy that there's not even an inkling of spirit. I mean, I'm far from any distillery character. I'm getting not even an inkling of any spirit character whatsoever. It is just Oloroso sherry. Let's see what that's like. Palate is pretty much the same. I will say it's a good Oloroso. It's got lots of dried fruit, lots of touch of spice, a little bit of toastiness, lovely seam of citrus running through it. It has to be said. So quality, I've got absolutely no argument whatsoever with. I mean, it is a very, very clean, very, very good sherry butt. But it has no character, aside from the obvious. It doesn't have any nuance, no light and shade. Nice sweetness, well integrated alcohol, a little drying on the aftertaste. Let's see if a little drop of water may well coax out some distillery character. I think that would be bloody amazing if it does. No, not really. Still pretty much the same. It's a little softer now. A little more toastiness on the oak, but you know, it's not really brought out any kind of spirit character, let alone distillery character. Let's see what the password. Nice cinnamon aftertaste, it has to be said, but it's all rather homogeneous now. It's all sherry monsters tend to go that way once you put a little drop of water with them. They all just go, and you lose even the sort of the nuance of the cask to a certain extent. So you know, if you like that style of whiskey, you're gonna love it. If you don't, then you know you're never gonna love it, and I'm never gonna love it. It has to be said, because it just lacks complexity, lacks balance. But you know, there's yeah, you have to sort of realise that not everybody's palates are exactly the same, and I think from if you love a sherry cask whiskey, then certainly you wouldn't dislike that particular one. So yeah. Okay, so moving on, this is the Benrinnes 15-year-old Malmsey Madeira finish. Let's see what the nose gives us on this then, shall we? That's quite tart, quite citric. It's got that light sort of biscuity Madeira character, touch of dried grape, sultana, raisin. I'm getting a little bit of distillery character and getting a little bit of barley. I mean, you've got to sort of work hard to find it, has to be said. It's got a lovely fragrance to it. There's a almost kind of baked banana note coming through now. I kind of like that. Or it's a bit heavy on the Madeira character. But I think the balance is just about there, So that's right. That's got a lovely mouthfeel, juicy, succulent. Again, biscuity Madeira, mostly, that is pretty noticeable. There's a little bit of barley kind of coming through. It's got a bit of a balance to it, but again, mainly about the Madeira. Dried grape, a little bit of raisin, sultana. It is what it is. There's enough distillery. Well, no, there isn't really any distillery character. I mean, what the hell is Benrinnes distillery character anyway? It's such a variable spirit. Excuse me. There's some barley notes. There's some spirit character, and it does kind of work quite nicely. And although it will be interesting to taste it against the Bual finish to see whether that sort of sweeter Madeira character does translate into a slightly sweeter note on the whiskey. I mean, overall, I think it works. It works quite nicely. I kind of quite like it. I'm going to put a little drop of water with it and see where we go from there. Like I said, it is a little bit on the heavy side. I don't think it really needs water. Yeah, it's not really changed an awful lot. There's kind of a little homogeneous, I would say. Maybe a touch more honey, a little bit more barley, possibly a little bit less Madeira. It's got a nice roundness, nice aromatic character. Let's see what we pass on that. A little bit more barley now. The sort of distillery character has sort of come a little bit forward. Some lovely sugar-coated citrus now. So sugar-coated lemon. Lovely finish. I mean, really, really nice. I mean, that's a lovely whiskey, it has to be said. Okay, if I'm going to be really, really critical, I will say the Madeira finish is a little heavy. But I think the balance is just about there, and so I think that's not a bad whiskey. Okay, so moving on to the 15-year-old Linkwood. This has been finished in Bual, Madeira. Let's see what the nose gives us on this then. It's not really any sweeter. I tell you, it's more complex. It's to be honest, it's more menthol, grass, tea leaves, coffee, spice, raisins, a little bit of, again, sultana, dried grape. A little bit more complex. I was expecting it to be a bit more sweeter, given the fact that Bual is a sweeter Madeira. But this is it. It's kind of not really coming through on the actual spirit side of things, shall we say. It's got a nice sweetness to it, along with a lovely citric note, it has to be said. There's a little bit of sort of grassy green fruit from the actual Linkwood. So again, this Linkwood is more in that sort of green, similar to the single cask that we started with, more in that green fruit end of the spectrum. Yeah, I kind of quite like that. It's got a nice rawness to it. I mean, sort of natural kind of rawness. It's not sort of like, you know, rip your face off rawness, but there's a sort of really nice natural character going on here, which I find quite appealing. Although, again, like the Benrinnes, we are more in the cask end of the spectrum. I think this has got enough balance to be interesting. Let's see what Palo. Juicy, rich, spicy, fruity. Again, we are talking mainly cask influence. Alcohol really nicely integrated. I mean, it's what, 57.6. You wouldn't have thought it. It gives it a nip and emphasises those spices on the mid palate. Makes a nice water, it really does. I mean, it's really juicy, really succulent, absolutely gorgeous finish. Again, okay, you know, purist says we are moving towards the cask end of the spectrum again, and there's only an intimation of the Linkwood character, and again it's the more citric kind of elements of the spirit that are kind of coming through, as opposed to sort of like the, you know, oiliness and the barley. I think it's got an okay balance. Less cask notes, less citric now with a little drop of water. It's again, I'm getting more oily kind of barley character, more classical Linkwood notes, and it just goes to show that I think there are certain distilleries that sort of just seem to, I mean, because obviously Linkwood, you know, Diageo tend to bottle the Linkwood, you know, swamped in bloody Oloroso. But it does kind of work well with sherry. I mean, but this has got, I think a little bit of water has actually done this an awful lot of good. It's lighter, it's more aromatic. The balance is a lot better. It's a, you know, little less citric, more barley. Juicy, really juicy. Let's see what that's like there. More oily spirit character, more barley. Again, the Madeira is kind of sat back in the background. It's more subtler. Still really, really juicy. A little bit of sultana, dried fruit, dried grape. To be honest with you, I wouldn't have known that was a Bual Madeira as opposed to a Malmsey Madeira at the end of the day. I think there's always a sort of like an element of the fact that there are subtle differences, I will give you that, but the question is, are the subtle differences down to the different distilleries, or are they down to the different casks? And that's always an interesting question. The only way you would truly know, I suppose, is if you bottled the same distillery in the two different Madeira casks. But in saying that, I think it's a lovely whiskey. I think the balance is just about right. Certainly a little bit of water actually sort of like helps that balance, and I kind of quite like that. Back to the roots, right, okay, so let's move on to the Kalila Palo Cortado finish. Let's see what the note gives us on this end. Oh, that's kind of, I wouldn't quite go as far as saying Kalila on steroids, but it's big, it's brash, it's herbal peat, it's menthol, it's iodine, it's smoke. Caol, And underneath all of that, I'm getting that grapey sweetness, a bit of tar, some dried fruit, a little bit of wood spice. And that's always the thing that's lacking with Caol Ila, is that little bit of wood. I mean, as you well know, Caol Ila being predominantly distilled for the blenders, they don't want too much wood character, so you just never get it. You know, I mean, Caol Ila is a lovely spirit, don't get me wrong. But you know, what I like about this is the nuance, is the slight difference. And it works really, really well. It's not that heavy Oloroso dark dried fruit, it's a lighter dried fruit. It's a bit of conserve, a bit of cinnamon, a bit of sultana. Just stunningly good nose. I mean, really, really good nose. It's just got the balance, it's got the it's just got the factor, you know, that sort of like you stick your nose in the glass and you go, oh, I like that, that's good. And it's just not in your, well, it is actually in your face. I mean, it's in your face Caol Ila. It's kind of almost kind of ramped up the whole Caol Ila kind of character. Frankly, bloody good. Let's see what the palate's like. Ooh, you can tell that's 59%. Dear God. It kind of kicks off with a lot of that sort of warm, dried Palo Cortado fruit, medicinal peat, herbal peat, iodine. I mean, it is a big, big mouthful. It is a take no prisoners kind of whiskey. Charred wood, tobacco leaf. I mean, that's a sensory overload, as we said. I mean, it literally hits you from the word go, and then it just sort of slowly kind of like dissipates as it goes. I mean, it doesn't really have a great deal of progression, I would say. That's you know, that's the criticism I would level at it. It does hammer the palate straight off the bat, and then it just kind of like meanders. It's kind of like sort of mellows. It's kind of like, you know, being sort of hit in the face with it, and it just kind of like, I like it. I mean, you know, you cannot sort of say this lacks intensity. Bit of green pepper on the finish, bit of tobacco leaf again. I mean, it's kind of like, yeah, it kind of hits the palate and then just sort of like, you know, just kind of, yeah. Is that a word? Is that a tasting note? It goes, yeah, you know. Oh dear God. Yeah, I mean, it's impressive. I mean, it has to be said. It's sort of, like I said, it goes against the grain from what I really like. I love progression, taking me through the sort of stages rather than being, you know, smacked over the head with it to start off with. But you know, you just got to say, wow, that's impressive. Let's see what those gives. Sweeter. I'm getting some honey notes now. A little bit more citrus as well. Herbal peat, possibly. It's a little lighter. Not so much intensity from the cask. Touch. Still got some sort of lovely smokiness, some tar. I mean, at the end of the day, you know, can you cock up Caol Ila? Well, you can cock up Caol Ila. I mean, I have come across some crap Caol Ilas, but I mean, you know, it really does take some going to cock up Caol Ila. Let's see what it passes like. Sweet, citric, smoky, tobacco-y, leathery, herbal. Oh, that is just gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. That's a lovely mouthful. Silky dried fruits, again, kind of kicks off with the sort of the peat returns on the finish. The sort of, I mean, that's got a lot more, that's got a better progression once you sort of put a little drop of water with it. All right, yeah, okay, you kind of lose that sort of smack in the face intensity to a certain extent, but what you lose on one hand, you gain on another. I mean, but either way, stunning Kalila. Okay, so let's sum today's episode of the show. Firstly, a big thank you to James Eadie for sending me the samples for today's episode of the show and their continued support. I mean, very much appreciated. The single cask Linkwood, I mean, that was gorgeous. I mean, I think it worked possibly slightly better with a little drop of water, but just an absolutely lovely Linkwood, it has to be said. Teaninich, I wasn't quite so impressed by that. Again, I think the Malaga cask was a little bit too heavy for it, and it just didn't quite kind of have the balance. The Glen Moray, I would say possibly that the Kalila were the sort of standout bottlings. I mean, that Glen Moray was just divine. It was stunning. It was gorgeous, and it was possibly more gorgeous because I didn't expect it to be that gorgeous. If you see what I mean, I expected it to be yeah, Oloroso finish, yeah, and it wasn't. It just defied everything I thought it would be. The Glen Ord didn't defy everything I thought it would be. It was everything I thought it would be. It was swamped and it was a sherry monster, and we will kind of I guess move on. So the Benrinnes, I thought yeah, that was nice. A lovely whiskey, again, just about enough balance to sort of get the sort of the distillery character and the sherry. Linkwood, the Bual Madeira finish, I thought was absolutely delightful. Again, like I said, I didn't really sort of get a great deal of difference between the different casks, but then they were two completely different whiskies at the end of the day. But I think, you know, I like Madeira finishes, that they do tend to work quite nicely. Sometimes they can be a bit heavy, I will give you that. But on this instance, I think the balance was just about there. And the Palo Cortado finished Kalila, I don't know why it works, but it works. I mean, you know, this is probably one of James Eadie's most consistent cask finish bottlings. They've done 2 or 3, I think. And it's just a lovely whiskey. This, you know, either way, whether you like it neat and you just want that sort of like, you know, big smack in the face from the word go, or whether you want the some more nuance when you put a little drop of water with it, that's the wonderful thing about cask strength whiskies. You know, you can sort of like play around with them to your heart's content to get it just how you want it, and that's what I love about them. So yeah, great episode of the show. I mean, some stunning whiskies. You really do need to buy them. I mean, you know, James Eadie have been, you know, bottling some stunning single casks for quite a while now, and I honestly think you should dip your toe in the water if you haven't done so. And not a lot else to say apart from I hope you've enjoyed this week's episode of the show. No idea what I'm going to be doing next week, but I'll probably figure it out at some stage. So all that's left to saying is it's not quite afternoon yet, so good morning and good ramming.